represented by Barrister Adobe Sandra Aniche. We also have in our midst, being represented as well, Center for Good Leadership and Credible Governance. Also here with us and being represented is Economic Rights Advocates. The Ohaneze Ndibo Youth Movement is not less in the representation. Heavily representing Rights for All International is our own Barrister Kingdom Okere. Please, a round of applause for every one of us. I most warmly welcome all our members that came from far and wide to this press conference. We thank the Almighty who has granted us the journey mercy from our various locations. And we pray as we are done here that He and only Him will take us back to our various destinations. Before I begin with the press conference text, I would want to call on our own Adobe Sandra Aniche, who is representing African Center for Justice and Human Rights, to first and foremost open the floor for every one of us. Please, can you give her a round of applause?
Thank you, sir. Good morning, gentlemen and fellow citizens. The Nigerian civil society has at all times in our history always stood by the Nigerian citizens. We have never been against the people, and we will never be against the people. On these policies by the Central Bank of Nigeria, on the redesign of the 200 naira, 500 naira, and 1,000 naira banknotes, as well as the adjoining policy of cash withdrawal limits, we have analyzed the situations thoroughly, bearing the interest of the people at heart, and we have come to the conclusion that the people are the ultimate beneficiaries of these policies. We reject the moves by some politicians to capitalize on the temporal challenges of the implementation of these policies. These challenges are mostly stage managed to make it look like the policy is anti-people. We reject the advances of some disgruntled and selfish politicians who have begun mobilization across the country for riots and call on them to retrace their steps before it is too late, as Nigerians and posterity will not have any space for forgiveness of anyone who has a role to play in the disruption of the 2023 general election, derailing of our democracy, or bringing the current administration to an abrupt end. As Nigerian civil society, we cannot cut our nose to spite our face. We cannot join hands with anyone to pull down Nigeria, and we call on all who have joined and are walking down this very offensive and ignoble path to stop now and make a U-turn. We reiterate again that security agencies should be on the lookout to nip these plans in the mud. Thursday is their target date to throw the country into turmoil, and they are mobilizing across the country. We call on our fellow citizens to refuse the temporal pleasure of having a few naira notes and aid these people to destroy our democracy and our country. Say no to them now. It is not love for us or love for our country that they are showing. They are only after their personal interests. When they stuffed money into their abada, Did they think about the people? When they allowed bandits to overrun and occupy local governments in their states and hold sway, did they think about the people? When citizens were being massacred in their states, did they show love or take the matter to the Supreme Court? Why are they only interested in killing the policy and not finding a way to make it better? Indeed, the only reason they are going to court to seek to kill the new Naira policy is because all the money they looted for either their retirements or for vote buying will be forcefully brought out and returned to the banks. They are afraid that they will be discovered and their game will be up. Nobody should be deceived that the suffering of the citizens is their concern. Not at all. They are only after their own interest. Therefore, we also call on the President, Muhammadu Buhari, and the CBN Governor, Mr. Emefiele, to stand up to these people and defy them. Finally, Mr. President and the Governor of the Central Bank should note that the civil society organizations, Nigerians, and all men of goodwill stand with you on this policy, irrespective of the several ex parte orders. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, our amiable Adobe Aniche, for that rendition. We appreciate you. Now, gentlemen of the press, it is now time for us to read the text of the press conference by the Coalition of Civil Society Central Coordinating Council, the apex coordinating organ of all civil society groups in Nigeria, on the intelligence that certain elements want to mobilize miscreants to cause violent disturbances across the country and to disassociate all civil society groups in Nigeria from such violent protests. This text is for today, 8 February 2023. I want to acknowledge all the protocols that are here present. I thank you all once again, gentlemen and ladies, for availing us the opportunity to address you this morning. It is our hope that you all will have a beautiful day, and to my fellow countrymen, I say good morning to you all. Sometime in December last year, over 350 civil society groups from all over the country and covering varying thematic areas came together and set up a central coordinating council to draw up regulatory modalities and set out guidelines and standard operating procedures for the activities of all the civil society groups. This is without prejudice to the statutory roles of the Corporate Affairs Commission. That singular move gave birth to the Civil Society Organization Central Coordinating Council, which is the highest organ in matters that affect civil society groups in Nigeria collectively. It is on that pedestal that we here today have meant to address you. Over the weekend, we were inundated with information that some of our member organizations we are approached by some persons with requests that they mobilize their members to protest, which, as we were informed, was going to degenerate into violent and destructive actions, all aimed at causing a shutdown of the system and make it look like Nigerians are against the Naira redesign and cash withdrawal limit policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria, so that the president can be forced to reverse both policies. Promises of handsome rewards were put on the table for them, and they were told that the protests should have reached almost all states of the Federation. The protests are to start in the Southwest to enable the Lagos media have genuine reason to make it trend on all our social media platforms. They were further told that it would be total and final push to the president. They picked information too that they needed names and faces of the civil society groups as they would engage the press and coordinate the media briefings, while the other urchins they have also engaged will carry out the destructions. From what we were informed, the protests were to happen simultaneously nationwide on Thursday. I mean, tomorrow, being the 9th day of February 2023. They have also agreed that they were to concentrate, that they were informed that the protests were to happen, and they will concentrate on Area 3 and Area 8 in Gariki. They were also to concentrate on banks and also Ademola Adetokunbo Crescent and Aminu Kano Crescent in Wusetu of Abuja FCT, where we have many banks situated. One of these men who approached them said something to our colleagues, which they quoted to us, and I shall repeat that now. The man said, and I quote, please listen. By the time 1 or 2 banks is set on fire in this Abuja, the president will wake up immediately to reverse these policies. Gentlemen of the press, following this report and our view of the policies, the proposal of these visitors, and the consequences for our country, we are glad to inform you all that all our members and member organizations are unanimous in our stand, and we shall reject this proposal, and we hereby reject it completely. We have further put out questions to our members on their views about the 2 policies of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Whether the policies are deserving of our support. And we have the overwhelming decision that the civil society groups in Nigeria are to fully support both policies. And it's on that strength that I have been empowered to inform Nigerians that the Nigerian civil society community has passed a vote of confidence on the Naira redesign policy and the cash withdrawal limits policy. It is based on the foregoing that we alert the security agencies that the protests being planned to hold tomorrow, Thursday, 9th February 2023, guised as protests against scarcity of the new naira, are indeed protests planned and organized to cause violence, destruction of public property, and disruption of public order and arson. Please quell the protests in the Southwest, as it is part of the synchronized plot. We beg the security agencies to please, we are on our knees, begging you to quell these protests that is going to happen tomorrow. Be at vigilance. Open your ears to the walls so that these plots will not come to fruition. The target is to reverse the policy, and where that fails, force a shift in the election date or lead to uprising that will cause the administration to come to an abrupt end. The opponents of the currency redesign and cash withdrawal limit policy deadline are pushing strongly at that for a shift of the February 2023 general election. We have credible intelligence that those behind the campaign for the shift in the deadline of the new currency redesign and cash withdrawal limits are now pushing that the 2023 general elections be shifted. This evil idea will throw Nigeria into a constitutional crisis and lead to the collapse of our constitutional democracy. Now these anarchists, realizing they cannot win the general election, are now looking for ways to destroy our democracy and undermine President Muhammad Buhari. These men who have benefited from the President Buhari now wants to destabilize and hurt our dear president. Not just our dear president, to hurt our democracy in their selfish bid of running errands for their new godfather in town. They have forgotten, and so soon at that, without President Buhari, some of them would not have legally or illegally made it to the office they now occupy. Now, President Buhari looks small in their eyes, and even without President Buhari's tenure expiring. These ungrateful power elements and betrayer characters are instigating people to destroy the legacies of our dear president and our hard-won democracy for the sake of their new master. If I may ask, what offense has the president committed by saying that he wants just credible election? What has he done so wrong by saying, I will provide a level playing ground for all parties that are concerned in this election? Were these people not beneficiaries of credible election in 2015? So why crucify our president, who is committed to giving Nigeria enabling environment for free and fair election? We wish to state it clearly again. Nigerians will not, and I say, Nigerians will not accept any shift in the 2023 general elections. We also stand firmly to state that we will not stand in favor of any shift in the deadline for the currency redesign policy. Let these men use their time they are wasting in attacking President Buhari and his good policy to go and put their billions back to the bank, or even let them open. If they are unable to put them in the banks, we are urging them to open the cash warehouses containing these billions in Lagos, in Kano, in Imo State, in Zamfara, in Kogi. Let them open up the vaults and share those billions to our poor masses, since they are now lovers of the poor. If those who want cash limits removed and new currency redesign policy shifted love us so much, and the suffering poor masses, let them use these few days before the end of the deadline to open their bullion vans and share the money to the poor masses. We are not saying share it when the deadline has gone. We say share it now. Now. Instead of looking for how to use it during an election to corrupt the electoral process. Share the money to the masses, because our President Buhari and the Central Bank of Nigeria are not giving you any further deadline shifts. Share it because before it becomes a used tissue paper. Let us tell these short men in thought and height, stop hiring people to attack the banks. Stop using road transport workers to go naked inside banking halls, because you are not going to stampede President Buhari to open the national treasury for you all to have dirty billions to buy votes and corrupt the same poor people you deliberately made poor. Why are states poor, if not mismanagement by these same governors who President Buhari had gone out of his way to help with bailouts? Where is the bailout fund from the CBN and the President Muhammadu Buhari? We ask, did these governors not loot it all? Lovers of the poor indeed, they call themselves. Where is the local government funds? If the local government money goes to the rural areas where it is meant for, will there be insecurity or poverty issues? Please, we beg you in the name of the Creator, stay clear of these policies meant for the good of the people. Do not dare our institutions and the powers of the president. Do you people think President Buhari can be pushed around? So you do not know that President Buhari's best retirement gift to himself is credible election? What makes you think that the president will destroy his future for your little rantings to please your new godfathers? We warn you again and again, do not dare our democracy and President Muhammadu Buhari. We also note that these unpatriotic citizens have no regards for the clear and positive order of the court. On this note, I want to bring to the notice of the Nigerian people, because it somehow coincided with this press briefing today, that the Supreme Court of Nigeria, maybe I should be the one breaking this news to you all, has just granted an ex parte application. Just few minutes ago, while we are in here for this conference. And we state most categorically that the Supreme Court does not have the locus. They don't have, sorry, not the locus, the jurisdiction to entertain that matter that has been presented before them by some state governors or some state attorney generals. We, the CSOs, are rejecting it. It is a plot to open the bank vaults to enable voter buyers and holders of illicit wealth to have cash to buy votes. We make due to ask the CJN, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, to hurriedly vacate the ex parte order in the overall interests of the Nigerian election. We have suffered. When I remember Nigeria, water run away my eyes, oh.
Water run away my eyes. When I remember poverty, water run away my eyes. Water run away my eyes. When I remember banditry, water run away my eyes.
When I remember bad government, water run away my eyes, oh. We have suffered a lot in the hands of these Supreme Court justices in undermining any efforts for credible election. Let me take us back a little bit. The Supreme Court voided the card reader which aided and increased official election results rigging. The Supreme Court declared a man who came fourth in an election as governor of a state. And that alone in itself helped to destroy Imo State and the sanctity of the ballot. The Supreme Court, this same Supreme Court, few days ago, declared two men who never participated in senatorial election as candidates in the person of Abio and Ahmed Lawan. And Nigerians are still in shock. And that helped to destroy the credibility of the primary processes. And today, again, the Supreme Court, without jurisdiction, in a matter that is not a dispute between the states and the federal government. If we will understand this very well, the Supreme Court, by our Constitution, the 1999 Constitution, as amended, have the right and the original jurisdiction to entertain matters from the states, between the states government and the federal government, when it is on issues of constitutional interpretation. Today, the Naira the redesign policy, it's a policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria, which was done by the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria with the backing of the President, Muhammad Buhari, is a policy of the federal government. So we are in issue. What is the issue for determination before the Supreme Court of Nigeria? Is there any conflict between the states and the federal government that the Supreme Court will have the guts to issue an ex parte order? And that is why I said, when I remember Nigeria, water run away my eyes, oh. We will cry no more. The Supreme Court, we beg the CJN, must redeem itself by vacating this order so that Nigerians will not see them as apex courts that is always against credible election. The Central Bank of Nigeria should, as a matter of fact, join the suits and file urgent preliminary objection on the jurisdiction ground so that the apex courts can vacate this order while Nigerians who have not deposited their old notes should avoid that had I known and go to do so immediately. This order is only designed to help politicians with sharing of old money during elections. We also call on the president, our dear president, to exercise his constitutional powers. We may suggest that he should make an urgent executive order to set the terminal date for the new currency to remain 10th February 2023, which he has the powers to do under the law, as the ex parte order made outside jurisdiction cannot stop the exercise of the executive powers of the president. Gentlemen of the press, we also beg the CJN to do not allow the Supreme Court to be used. These men, they have boasted. They boasted, we had it on credible intelligence, that upon filing this application, that they will get an order. To our utmost chagrin, we didn't know that the order will come so soon. What we heard from our information is that the order will be granted by Friday. But quite unfortunately, today as we are seated here, the order has been granted. Please, my Lord the CJN, if you do not know about these people, we may have to tell you now. They are people who do not like democracy and rule of law. They are people who do not cherish free and fair elections. They desperately need money because they must buy votes. Even if our democracy fails, they do not care about Nigerians. Please, the CJN, my honorable CJN, if our democracy fails because of this issue, Nigerian people will definitely hold you responsible. My Lord, we also do not need to remind you that the Supreme Court is a court of policy. The Nigerian people want this policy, but a few people want to thwart it for their own selfish and unpatriotic reasons. The legislature has made the new Electoral Act, which Nigerians agree is a departure from the old order. The executive has signed it into law, and the INEC has promised Nigerians a credible process by the use of beavers. My Lord, these men now want to use the judiciary, which is the last hope of the common man, against the same common man. They seek to discredit the sanctity of the Supreme Court. And that is your duty, my Lord, the CJN, to ensure that they fail and fail woefully. That being said, the Nigerian civil society lauds the FCT High Court for the courage and the erudition in granting the order and fixing a close return date, showing that the court does not want to sleep on this matter. If you remember, just yesterday, the FCT High Court granted an order saying that there should be no extension of the date, and we are lauding that courage by the High Court of FCT. Gentlemen, it is the final resolution of the civil society that the February 10 deadline already set by the Apex Bank is irrevocable and irreversible. The impact of this is that we shall stand against every action that is capable of destabilizing our democracy or derailing the 2023 general elections by public incitement and stage-managed protests across the states of the Federation, disguising the protests with the name of civil society groups. We completely disassociate all the credible civil society groups in Nigeria from the planned protests and urge for swift action by security agencies in checkmating the anticipated breakdown of law and order. We came to this resolution after intense deliberations and extensive consultations with our members, particularly those in the finance and economic thematic areas. We feel the pains of Nigerians. We have been inconvenienced by this policy due to the sabotage of certain elements in the commercial banks. Many of them are being arrested. You must have heard about them by different security agencies. These pains, as unfortunate as they are, only is going to be temporary and will subsequently be outweighed by the long-term benefits of these policies. Nigerians should not allow looters and vote buyers the opportunity to take advantage of our pains, to open windows that will allow them to loot our common patrimony and compromise the sovereign will of the people. We hereby call on the central bank leadership to continue and also double its efforts at resolving these hitches so that Nigerians will not be ripped off before they are able to access their money. We urge the Apex Bank to set an example with any of the commercial banks found wanting in the sabotage of hoarding the new banknotes by imposing heavy financial fines on them, as it will surely be a deterrent to any other banks whose officials are planning the same thing. We further urge the Apex Bank to send out manuals of operations now stating severe sanctions to all the banks and financial institutions licensed and operating in Nigeria so that they withdraw their services from any person or group seeking to use their platform to compromise elections. Following the 2015 general election, it became public that our commercial bank yielded its platform and services to a political party for the rigging of elections. It is not public knowledge if there are sanctions, but Nigerians will not want the repeat of that. But where it occurs, citizens would want to also hear of the heavy sanctions imposed. The Apex Bank should also demand of all the CEOs and managing directors of all banks who received allocations of the new notes to bring documents to prove how all these monies were disbursed and in the units how they were disbursed. This call has become necessary with reports in the media showing that officials of banks have been arrested for hoarding of the new notes while denying availability. Thus, from our findings, the Central Bank of Nigeria has delivered on its mandates by disbursing adequate cash to the commercial banks, and it is the banks that have failed in their duties to their customers because certain officials of the banks resorted to doing business and trading the money, thereby causing artificial scarcity of the new bank notes. We thereby call on all commercial banks in Nigeria to step up and conduct internal inquiries on the activities of the officials who are engaging in sharp practices with these new banknotes. We want to reiterate the fact that the problem Nigerian people are facing is not CBN cash disbursement, but criminal hijack of the cash released to the banks. For example, in Yobe State alone, over 4 billion was released by CBN to banks in Yobe, who hijacked it from the banks. The same elements making noise that they are fighting for us. The bank managers across all parts of the country should be arrested immediately for this economic sabotage. And this will expose how over 300 billion naira released to the banks was criminally delivered to their political friends and thereby causing cash scarcity. The banks failed Nigerians and the few political class who work with the bank managers to take away this cash must be identified. How did the money develop wings? How come bank vaults are empty despite the billions given to them? Now they are crying for more so they can steal it and divert it to their friends in politics. If over 300 billion cash was in circulation across the counter and ATM, would there have been any rush and scarcity of the new notes? Not at all. Our pain is that the bank heads who committed these actions are still parading without being in detention, while the government and the CBN are suffering attacks for something they did not own or do or take a part in. Finally, fellow citizens, and gentlemen of the press, we as the apex organ of all civil society in Nigeria, once again urge Nigerians to keep supporting these policies as they are for our ultimate good and to resist being used by persons and groups whose goals are not noble to capitalize on our temporary discomfort, to cause violence and destruction in the society. I want to thank you all, and many Nigerians, and may Nigeria remain blessed. Soli, soli, soli. Solidarity forever, we shall always fight for our right. Please, gentlemen of the press, like we announced earlier, we have our colleagues here that will also make some talking points or comments on the issues that we raised. Please, a round of applause for them. May I most humbly invite our own Kingdom Okere, Barrister Kingdom Okere, the representative of Rights for All Internationals.
Well, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen, members of the civil society here gathered. Well, while we were here converging for this press conference, a news broke from the Apex Court, the Supreme Court of Nigeria, that the three governors that conspired to set aside the terminal date for the Naira swap, the old Naira swap, have succeeded in getting an ex parte application, even though when the Supreme Court of Nigeria lacked jurisdiction. Now we, members of this coalition, have now seen the action of the Supreme Court of Nigeria and that of the governors as a battle for the survival of democracy. This is now a battle for the survival of democracy. Nigeria has become a theater of absurdity where members of the political class go to the stage and play any script they like, thinking that all of us are fools. Now let us ask, where was El-Rufai, who admitted in live television conversation, I think that was Arise TV, where he admitted that this new Naira policy was targeted against his own party, the APC, and their presidential candidate, who also admitted in Farawa Abeokuta that the new Naira policy will prevent him from using the old Naira that was brought to him in Blue Van to buy the vote of Nigerians. Because they know that they have failed Nigerians, and they know that their only hope of winning this election is to buy our vote. That was why Tinubu admitted that in Farawa Abeokuta, where he said they seized the Naira, they made the fuel scarce so that he will lose the election. Their hope, and their only hope is to buy our votes with the old Naira. And that is why they are fighting. This coalition of civil society, we also had press conference in December where we alerted Nigerians of the ex parte order that sought to arrest Emefiele, and we said we know those who were against that script, and sooner or later, those that were against this, that were behind the script, surface themselves, as we have seen. Now, let us ask, as members of the civil society organization and as Nigerians, El-Rufai, where were you when the bandits attacked the railway and made away with Nigerians for more than 4 months in the bush? You never went to the Supreme Court. You never went to the Supreme Court to seek an ex parte order to compare the IG of police, to compare the army chiefs, to rescue the victims. El-Rufai, where were you? The governor of Zamfara State, where were you when bandits will collect money from farmers before they can go to farm and farm? Where were you? Now a policy that is targeted at not only ensuring free, credible election, but to also fight banditry because of the ransom that is being paid in cash to the bandits in the bush. El-Rufai, the very man that banditry has crippled his state for the past 8 years. El-Rufai is now the person fighting this same policy that's targeted at ending banditry. That means El-Rufai should be investigated. He has a role in this banditry. Governor El-Rufai of Kaduna State should be investigated. We, coalition of civil society organizations, are calling for his investigation. He must have a stake in this banditry business. He must have a stake in this banditry business because he is not only fighting for Tinubu to vote, he's also fighting that the old Naira will remain in circulation so that bandits will continue to receive ransom. El-Rufai, what is your stake? Where were you for the past 8 years? bandit crippled your state. You never went to Supreme Court to seek ex parte order. Now, a policy that seeks to nip bandits in the bud, you have gone to get an ex parte order where the Supreme Court lacks jurisdiction. Like my colleague said, the Supreme Court does not have jurisdiction only jurisdiction when there is dispute between state and federal government. What is in dispute is a policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Under the CBN Act, there is no dispute between the federal government and the 3 states that went to court. Therefore, the Supreme Court do not have jurisdiction. It is the Federal High Court that have jurisdiction under Section 251 of the 1999 Constitution to interpret the very sections of the CBN Act that empowers the CBN to redesign Naira and to determine whether the policy has been done in accordance with statutory provision. It is only the Federal High Court that can make that order. It is only the Federal High Court that is empowered by the Constitution to make that, to review it and make an order of injunction to either stop the CBN from continuing or allow the CBN from continuing. It's only the Federal High Court that have that jurisdiction. After the Federal High Court have interpreted that section of the CBN Act, you can now snowball from there to Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court. That is the only time the Supreme Court will have jurisdiction. The Supreme Court does not have original jurisdiction on this very matter. And the Supreme Court of Nigeria, please don't set our democracy on fire. The fire you set in Imo State is still burning. The fire you set in Imo State is still burning. Supreme Court of Nigeria, don't set our democracy on fire. If you allow politicians to have access to this old Naira note to buy our vote, you will set this country on fire. Supreme Court of Nigeria, don't set our democracy on fire. We are calling on the Chief Justice of Nigeria to probe this expert application that was granted outside the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. We will mobilize all lawyers in defense of democracy to observe this proceeding. They must not set this country on fire. The fire in Imo State is still raging. We call on all of us of democracy to defend this our democracy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, our amiable Kingdom Okere, who has spoken so wonderfully. Please, we will want to also call on one of us again, Mr. Suleiman, to just give us a comment in 1 minute, please.
‘Yan uwana, ‘yan Najeriya, ina muku barka da rana. Kamar yadda kuka sani, duk lokacin da muka samu kanmu a wani yanayi a cikin ƙasar nan, ƙungiyoyi na masu zaman kansu sukan fito domin su yi magana don su tabbatar cewa abin da zai taimaki talaka aka yi. Dangane da wannan doka na kuɗi da Babban Bankin Najeriya ta kawo na canja naira 200, 500 da naira 1000 da kuma ƙayyade adadin abin da za a iya fitarwa. Mun yi zama kuma mun duba cewa wannan abu zai taimaki 'yan Najeriya ne. Amma abin ya ba mu mamaki lokacin da muka ga ƙungiyar gwamnonin Arewa sun zo fadan shugaban ƙasa domin a dakatar da wannan abin. 'Yan Najeriya zan muku tambaya. Wata 5 baya zuwa yanzu mutane suna siyan mai akan kuɗi naira 400 zuwa 500. Mun ga waɗannan gwamnonin sun je fadan shugaban ƙasa domin a sauƙaƙa ma 'yan Najeriya? 'Yan Najeriya muna kallon yadda ake sace 'ya'yanmu da jama'anmu, ana buƙatar kuɗi sai an amsa kuɗin fansa. Waɗannan gwamnonin sun tashi sun je fadan shugaban ƙasa don a magance maganin tsaron nan? Muna kallo yadda ƙasar nan ta shiga halin da muka shiga ciki. 'Yan Najeriya muna kallo jami'o'inmu, shugabannin jami'o'i sun yi wata 8 suna yajin aiki. Waɗannan shugabannin ƙasar saboda ba 'ya'yansa a makarantun gwamnati sun tashi sun je shugaban ƙasa domin a ga cewa an magance wannan matsalan. don menene yanzu da aka kawo wannan doka wacce aka san cewa za ta taimaki talaka wannan fiyan ƙuri'u da suke yi in babu kuɗin nan ba za su iya fiya ba sun tattara kuɗi sun ajiye su a gidajensu idan aka ce an kashe an sa wannan dokan ba yanda za a yi suna jin tsoron cewa kuɗin da suka ajiye zai lalace zai zama mara amfani don haka ne yasa suka rugo suka zo wajen shugaban ƙasa suna neman a kashe wannan doka to 'yan Najeriya ku fahimta ku sani cewa wannan abun ku zai taimaka an yi ta ne domin 'yan Najeriya kuma mu ma a shirye muke shi yasa muke goyon bayan wannan doka ta tabbata idan aka ce yau an ƙaida da adadin kuɗin da za a iya fita masu satan mutane ba za su iya fita su amsa kuɗi a hannun jama'a ba ina fata mun fahimta don haka dole harkan kidnapping zai zo ƙarke a cikin wannan ƙasan nagode
Please a round of applause for him. We just have like 1 second for Mr. Gabi to just tell us something.
Jama'a salamu alaikum. Me muke nema a Najeriya yanzu? Me ne muke nema a Najeriya yanzu? Muna neman shugaban kasa mai kyau ne. Wanda zai ba mu asibiti mai kyau. Wanda zai ba mu abinci. Wanda zai ba mu makaranta mai kyau ne. Wanda zai ba mu hanya mai kyau ne. Amma yanzu muna magana kudi. Me za mu yi da kudi? Suna neman kudi su siya kadi kawai ne. Ba ma sayar da kadi yau ne. Ba ma sayar da kadi a wannan zabi. Za mu yi zabi mai kyau a wannan. Allah zai ba mu abin da muke so. Insha Allah za mu samu. Jama'a salamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Thank you, gentlemen of the press. At this point, I want to please announce to us that we have a letter we want to submit to the Central Bank of Nigeria. It is just a stone throw here. Please, let us coordinate ourselves and do a little match to do this presentation to the Central Bank of Nigeria. But before that, can we close this session with the national anthem? Arise to your feet as we render our national anthem once more. So compatriots, Nigeria's call obey.
This is Channels Television. You've been watching our live broadcast of the coalition of CSOs of Nigeria on the redesigned policy of the central bank. I want to reemphasize here now that the opinions and views expressed are solely that of the speakers and not of Channels Television. We now return to our Lagos studios to continue with our regular broadcast. Stay with us.
You've been watching a live Channels Television event.